Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.
Over the last few weeks, the mainstream media has been trying to redefine the term mass shooting. Now, in the past, a mass shooting was usually defined as an incident where a lone individual went to a venue and then shot up random strangers and taking their lives in an attempt to push whatever agenda they had, or because they had some issue or grievance with individuals at that venue. But what the mainstream media is trying to do now to redefine the term mass shooting is they are trying to change the term to make it where it's any sort of incident where individuals wind up getting shot and killed as a result of a group of individuals participating in some violence. Now, this attempt to redefine the term mass shooting has a lot to do with race, because in the past, the term mass shooting was usually associated with your white or non-black beta males, and occasionally it was associated with a black male, such as Frank James, who recently shot up a subway train here in New York City. So usually the mass shooters in most cases were usually in most cases white or non-black, but what they're trying to do now by redefining the term mass shooting is they are trying to make foundational black American perpetrators the face of this kind of violence. Because in two recent incidents, one that took place in the West Coast where a group of individuals shot up a nightclub, and one that took place in Pittsburgh where a group of young adults wound up shooting up a house party at an Airbnb, these really do not constitute mass shootings. No, these incidents basically are violence that usually takes place outside of a bar or a nightclub, and they don't really fit the definition of a mass shooting. But the mainstream media wants to try to reframe the narrative and redefine the term mass shooting so that it can fit into this narrative, so that they can go out here and change the face of mass shooters from your whites and your non-blacks to black people. Because what they want to do is make the black man the face of this kind of violence, so that they can go out here and have the justifications to go after black Americans and use this as a reason to put black Americans in prison. So this is a whole, again, redefinition of terms, and this whole redefinition of terms is meant to try to change the narrative to take the image of a mass shooter off of the usual whites and non-blacks and turn it into a crime that is associated with foundational black Americans. However, statistically, this has never been the case when it came down to this kind of violence, and I know from doing my research for the book, The Man Crisis, that the usual individual who winds up participating in this kind of violence usually is either a white male or a non-black male who usually comes from either a single parent home or a divorced home, and this is usually the individual who winds up perpetrating this kind of violence on society. But the mainstream media does not want to talk about this kind of perpetrator, because to talk about this kind of perpetrator means we have to take a hard critical examination of the way we have been raising white and non-black boys here in America, and that means taking a long, hard look at the females in our society. And because many of these whites and non-blacks don't want to take a look at the white and non-black woman and the poor job she's been doing raising children, they go out here and are now looking for a way to deflect from those white females and those non-black females, and they also want to deflect from the complete failure of their economic system, where females are out here working and not taking care of business at the home, because all of their plans for their great society have failed. And what we're seeing now is more and more empirical evidence that shows many of these mass shooters are coming from that so-called great society, where your females went out to work, and many of these females thought they could go out here and be the mother and the father. Unfortunately, what they have done is raise 2 to 3 generations of these beta males, and these beta males have gone from becoming ticking time bombs over the last 40 years to becoming these landmines that are exploding all across the country. And as people start doing more and more research and start connecting more dots, as all of this violence becomes more and more frequent, what they're trying to do is trying to find a way to find somebody else to blame for all of this violence, and the usual scapegoat is the American black man. So what they want to do is take the focus away from the failures of their leftist policies, the failures of the feminist mothers to be the mother and the father, and they want to take all of these failures and then avoid having to deal with them by saying, oh, the black man is the face of this kind of violence. But when you start to look at the empirical data as related to these mass shootings, you see that most of these mass shootings are all connected, because the usual perpetrators are these white and non-black males who do not know how to function in society. It is usually these kind of males who participate in this kind of violence, because these men have a pattern of not knowing how to navigate through life due to the dysfunctional way they have been raised. But the mainstream media, they want to go out here and recategorize a drive-by shooting or a shooting at parties as mass shootings. And again, this is an insidious way to try to deflect attention from the usual suspects as related to mass shootings, and then make black men the face of this kind of violence, and then use that as an excuse to go after black men. Now, yes, there are some black men like Frank James who go out here and participate in mass shootings, but when you look at their behavior, it fits right in line with the pattern and profile for beta males, like I describe in my book, The Man Crisis, and all of their behaviors fall into that pattern of behavior. But what the mainstream media does not want people to do is start going out here and connecting dots as related to that behavior, and seeing how this behavior all comes from a certain pattern of raising children. And they don't want us to go out here and start making serious efforts towards changing policy as related to the way we handle things in government, and change the way we go out here and raise families. They don't want us to change that, because many in big business are making a lot of money from the way children are raised. But sadly, the way they are allowing children to be raised is raising dysfunctional males, and these males aren't able to function in society. And as these males are not able to function in society, it is creating a society that is becoming more and more violent. But you cannot go out here and project that violence and say, oh, it's just black men participating in this violence. No, the real perpetrators are perpetrating this violence are white and non-black, and they are disproportionately white and non-black. And if you don't do something about this disproportionation, what you're going to do is see more and more of these beta male landmines going off all across the country, and the man crisis getting worse in this country. And that's something the mainstream media and those who control it don't understand. This man crisis is at a nuclear level at this point, and you have, again, an increasing frequency of this kind of violence due to the COVID-19 lockdowns accelerating the fuse on many of these males who have been simmering and boiling in anger for many years. And this is why we're seeing more of these violent incidents not just happening every day, but we're seeing them happen to the point where it is at least 1, 2 to 3 times a day. And on the weekends, we're getting 3 and 4 of these incidents. And instead of going out here and looking to make serious change, what we have are those in the mainstream media looking to play race up as a narrative and trying to change the narrative and make black men the face of mass shooting. And that's not the case at all, because a mass shooting is an incident where an individual who has a grievance with some sort of issue that they're having, they go out here and shoot random people, and they make premeditated plans to do so. These other incidents that they're presenting, like the nightclub in, I believe, California, and the incident at the house party, these are not mass shootings. These are just angry groups of individuals, and what they want to do is use these angry groups of black individuals to turn it into the narrative of a mass shooting, and then use this to push the narrative that black men are the ones perpetrating this kind of violence. Again, many people don't see the insidious and subtle nature of the race game being played here as related to the narrative around foundational black Americans in crime. But when I take, as someone who has done research on these types of violence for many years, I see where they're trying to make the black man the face of this kind of violence, and then after they make the black man the face of this kind of violence, what they do is go out here and then fund things like crime bills, and then use this as a way to go after foundational black American men. Meanwhile, the true perpetrators of this kind of violence get a pass because we're not dealing with the root of this issue, which is the man crisis going on in this country due to the dysfunctional way we have been raising boys to become men. And if we don't do anything about the way we raise boys to become men by making a hardcore investment in developing strong men, we're going to have a bloodbath in these streets. And that's what's happening these days, because many of these males, they have had their fuses cut short as related to these lockdowns. And now that they're coming out of lockdowns, many of these men's mental health have deteriorated. Many of these men who are already simmering and boiling in anger are growing more and more frustrated. And many of these men, because they have no discipline and self-control, they act impulsively, looking to do harm to others because they feel like they have no place in society. They feel like they have no purpose. And since America has not invested in its men for over 6 decades, many of those men feel like they have nothing to lose, and they have no problem taking another man's life. So many people, they're trying to turn it into an issue of race, and it just shows how completely dysfunctional America is, because these mass shooters are something that affect everyone here in America. And if America doesn't get it together with this man crisis and get out of its whole white supremacist narratives, many of America's men will not be in a place to be able to make America a great place again. Now, if you want to learn more about the dysfunctional behaviors of your beta males, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and Kindle, Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Learn how to avoid predatory females like Instagram models and e-girls in their virtual con games with Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Get your copy of Stop Simping in Cyberspace in paperback and Kindle today.